Hello.
Good morning, one and all present here. A very warm welcome to each and every one of you to the last day of the 4th National Media Conclave. I am Shemunti.
And I am Rupsha, your host for the day.
On the behalf of the Department of Journalism and Mass Communication of Sister Nivedita University, I welcome each and every one of you to the last day of this conclave. Can I receive a round of applause, please? Thank you.
The Conclave also partners with Cyber Peace, which highlights the growing importance of digital safety and cyber ethics in media practice, and Grooving Kolkata, which adds a creative dimension to the Conclave by integrating culture and youth-driven culinary expression into its fold. Shopper Stop added a selfie booth to keep the Gen Z trends in place. Together, these partners underscore the Conclave's forward-looking vision. Adding to the academic weight of this year's conclave are two internationally renowned education partners, the International Association for Media and Communication Research, Gender and Communication Wing, and the International Communication Association. Their involvement situates the conclave within a global framework of critical media scholarship, ensuring that discussions resonate beyond India.
Over the past 2 days, we have journeyed through powerful discussions, inspiring keynote addresses, and thought-provoking presentations that examine the many dimensions of media and communication in our times. And now, as we arrive at this final day of the conclave, it comes together to the most impactful form, a day that promises not just to conclude but to leave us with insights, reflections, and inspirations to carry forward along with this session.
We begin the plenary session of the day on the topic, the reality of being marginalized. It's a theme that touches upon identity, power, silence, voice, and of course, the constant negotiation of space in media and culture. We are truly honored to have here with us our keynote speaker, Dr. Moushumi Bhattacharya.
Can we have a round of applause, please? Thank you.
She is an associate professor and in charge of the Center for Journalism and Mass Communication at Vishwabharati University, Shantiniketan, with over 2 decades of distinguished teaching and research experience. She earned her master's and PhD in journalism and mass communication from the University of Calcutta and has been the recipient of several prestigious fellowships, including the ICSSR Postdoctoral Fellowship, the IAWRT FOKUS Postdoctoral Research Grant, and the US government's SUSI Fellowship in Journalism and Media. She was also selected to represent India at the International Learning Project for Shaping Globalization. Please, may we have a round of applause, please? Ma'am, we welcome you on stage.
We will also like to call up Professor Dr. Milal Parekh to felicitate her. Can we have a round of applause, please? Thank you. Thank you so much, ma'am. We are delighted to have Dr. Saswati Gangopadhyay as our session chair for today's session. She is a professor of mass communication at the University of Bardhaman with 2.5 decades of academic and research experience. A distinguished scholar in the field of media studies, she holds a PhD in journalism and mass communication from the University of Calcutta. Her research interests lie in the representation of women in media, digital culture, audiovisual narratives, and the intersection of media and technology. She has supervised multiple PhD and MPhil scholars and has an extensive publication record with more than 50 research papers in peer-reviewed journals and edited volumes. Her work explores diverse themes including digital journalism, gender and media, web series, programmatic advertising, and digital literacy. Dr. Gangopadhyay has authored a book, also edited many books, journals, and contributed several UGC, MOOC modules. She has delivered keynote address and chaired session across numerous national and international conferences. Can we have ma'am on the stage, please?
I also request Meena ma'am to come on stage again to felicitate ma'am. May we please have a round of applause? May I now please request Moushumi ma'am to come on stage to deliver her keynote address?
Thank you so much. Thanks to Professor Minal Parikh, Arindam Basu, Shoikat Mojumdar, and all the faculty members of Department of Mass Communication Journalism, Sister Nivedita University, and the other organizers for inviting me here. And I'm actually feeling very honored because session chair of this particular session is Dr. Saraswati Gangopadhyay. We are actually working together for more than 2 decades and almost working in the same field. And yes, thanks to those lovely moderator and the session moderators, yes. So yeah, you actually gave a very kind introduction. My chair of this session, she told me that I was asking for her permission, so how much actually time I can take. So she has allotted me some 10 to 12, 20 minutes, so that's something really good. So taking cue from the theme of the conference, what I'm trying to make some points on something, unheard to unyielding, realities of marginalization in India. It's not that I'm going to give a very grim picture, but yes, we have to, as researcher, we have to actually reflect on something which we all should talk about and discuss. So, I would like to begin my deliberation with the 147 verse of Manusmriti. A woman should never have recourse to independence. Centuries ago, this line was written as an eternal decree. A daughter under her father, a wife under her husband, a mother under her sons. Independence was not just discouraged, it was unthinkable. So now I ask, are these words history, or do they still shape the present narrative? Today's deliberation of mine is not an actually academic exercise. I think it is an urgent exploration of how deeply patriarchy, caste, religion, and heteronormativity continue to bind lives in India for years. And I invite you all here to travel with me through stories, a few statistics, and historical legacies. Not to feel despair again, I'm telling you, but to recognize how courage emerges even from silence. So, one name is very famous, I know, one I do not know whether you are aware of the other name. So this is something which I wanted to mention. Bandit Queen Fulan Devi, I think many of us we can remember. Marginalization often mutes voices, we know, but history shows us silence is never permanent. It gathers, it hardens, and one day it breaks open as courage. Consider Fulan Devi, married off as a child, then abused, abandoned, assaulted. She entered the ravens not by choice but by compulsion. To many, she was a bandit, but to countless women, she actually was a symbol. Proof that the oppressed can refuse to remain prey. And when she walked into the Parliament of India, it was less her entry into politics than patriarchy's moment of reckoning. Now let us shift to Meena Kotwal. We generally think that the organizations like BBC, CNN, they are very progressive. They are the ultimate epitome of everything, independence and all. Yes, her battlefield was the newsroom of BBC. As a Dalit journalist in BBC, she concealed her caste, fearing discrimination. When it was revealed at the BBC, just this word. So prejudice chased her out of the system, but she refused invisibility. There was a colleague of her, somehow she got to know about her caste and all, and then there was a very kind of systematic kind of discrimination against her, and which she only could fill, not others. And at the result of it, she actually left BBC, but she refused invisibility. She created Muknayak, a digital platform where marginalized voices speak unfiltered. Fulan fought with weapons and Meena with words. But both remind us that when the system silences, the marginalized invent their own microphones. Now let us turn from stories to few stark realities. Coalition of Feminists for Social Change, a global advocacy network, in a publication, Sexual and Gender-Based Violence Against Dalit Women and Girls in India, shown us through a research study that India has 200 million Dalit women. Between 2009 to 2019, rape cases rose by 159%. Surveys reveal that 54% face physical assault, 46% sexual assault, 64% verbal abuse. The cruelest statistics of all, 85% of such victims are under 30, the very age when life should be opening, not closing, but it happened with them. But violence is not only part of the picture. Add child marriages, dowry deaths, female infanticide, and systematic denial of property rights. Now, denying women education, restrict their mobility, what emerges is not just violence, but a carefully designed deprivation of opportunity. Yes, laws exist. Laws of course do exist. The Domestic Violence Act 2013 and the Criminal Law Amendment. But reality is stigma, disbelief, and silencing. So when actually all these things happen, behind every number is a girl whose laughter was stifled, a woman whose ambitions were clipped. These numbers are not statistics, by the way. They are gravestones of possibilities, and actually which shows the failure of the system. Now, beyond gender, I was talking about gender, vigilantism and the religious minorities. Marginalization wears many masks, actually. One is religion. Beyond 2000, I will be talking about all regimes here. 3 examples I'll be giving. Between 2010 to 2017, vigilant mob killed 24 people and injured 124, often on the mere suspicion of carrying beef. And there were persons beaten to death because suspicion became weaponized truth. Now, back to 1999. The violence spreads wider when Graham Staines, a missionary, and his two sons were burnt alive. Then again, in 2008, Kandhamal witnessed a bloodbath, 100 dead, thousands displaced, churches vandalized. In Chhattisgarh, villagers were dragged into reconversion ceremonies. Religious minorities like women were told where they belong, under suspicion, under control, under constant threat, and yet these acts of violence are dressed up as protection of tradition. When tradition becomes an alibi, brutality gains respectability. That is the scenario. Very sad picture though. And now the queer case. Let us open another page of marginalization, the queer experience. Despite court victories, queer Indians remain very, very, very unsafe. A study of men who have sex with men revealed that 60% faced violence, physical, sexual, cyber, or verbal. Trans individuals have been driven to suicide after botched surgeries, murdered in public, or left to bleed by medical neglect. Even though the protectors of law sometimes become perpetrators and extorting, abusing, assaulting queer citizens, and families meant to be the safe havens to often lock doors, disown children, or subject them to forced treatments. So yet community organizations of such queer community actually offer sanctuary. They create spaces where queer individuals can finally excel, where they can say, I exist and I matter. That resilience is itself an act of defiance. Now, if we can see, if you can look back into the history, the marginalization is not new, nothing new. It has deep colonial roots. The Criminal Tribes Act of 1871 declared entire communities born criminals. Imagine an infant entering into the world with a tag, with a stigma that already condemned. Though repealed in 1952, but the stigma survived. Today, Dalit women are still treated with suspicion. Minorities are still vilified as outsiders. Queer persons are still labeled as deviant. The colonial branding lingers in our minds even without the law. Justice P.S. Narasimha reminds us, marginalized people do not need our sympathy. They don't even need the empathy. They need us to ensure their constitutional rights are real, tangible, and enforceable. Inclusion is not benevolence, it is justice long overdue, which we all should remember. So now, what should we do actually? We discuss a lot. In fact, after this discussion also, maybe questions will arise, but what are the things we should do? The road ahead has 3 essential pathways, which I believe. Of course, the researchers, they do believe also, legislative. Protection must travel beyond paper to practice. Judicial. Justice may be swift, credible, and accessible, not a labyrinth of delays. And societal. Empathy must be stronger than suspicion. We must move from charity to justice, from sympathy to rights, because democracy is not gift handed down. We must remember that. It is a birthright guaranteed by the Constitution, which is a very strong constitution in this entire world. So this is the pivot. Inclusion is not an act of kindness, but the fulfillment of a promise, which we should remember. So, the closing thought. We began with a Manusmriti decree, lifelong dependence. We end with a democratic call, that is fearless citizenship, which we all should remember. We all should leave this world. A democracy thrives only when every citizen can live without fear and without silence. Phulan Devi, Meena Kotwal, Dalit women, religious minorities, queer individuals, their journey show us that silence can become stories, stories actually can spark movements, And of course, movement can lead us to the justice. But justice must not be exception. It must be every day. So I close with a challenge actually. Let us not measure progress by the GDP or growth chart. Let us measure whether the most marginalized can walk, can speak, can live without fear. Only when the most silent speak without trembling can we say democracy has truly arrived. I'm actually grateful to the organizers that they have thought about such a topic where we could reiterate all such words. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. There was so much of takeaways from your speech. Well, now I'll call up the convener of the conclave, Professor Arindam Basu.
Thank you, Moushami. It was such a thought-provoking lecture. I would not say lecture, it was a dialogue that I think was very aptly broached among the participants, the students, and the keynote speaker. I just wanted to share a very small thing, which is she has pointed out the Graham Staines murder. It so happened that I was there when the shooting for the film Uttara was taking place by Buddhadev Dashgupta, a film that was made on the Graham Staines murder episode. There, during several discussions that we had with the director, he had chosen a very somnolent village, a village about which you would hardly know. And then there are two wrestlers who are wrestling for a woman without any thought about what the woman wanted. And then he sets it against the theme of a village of midgets. And this midgets and the maiden become the symbol of the unrepresented, the marginalized, whose thoughts, whose consciousness are never accepted. They are left out of all the happening places. And yet, the beauty and the monstrosity that coexists together in every setting, in every corner of our existence, is so aptly brought out by the director. And finally, the woman seeks refuge in the midget's village, a kind of utopia where the dwarves tell the tall men of the world how to live. So I think that's the basic question. Who's our hero today? Do we search the heroes in the tall and the well-established, or the midgets we want to forget? Without further ado, I would welcome Dr. Shashwati Gangopadhyay to the stage. Ma'am, if you can take your chair, because we'll begin with the sessions now. And thank you once again, Moushami, for that brilliant speech. And over to you, ma'am.
Hello. The very first presentation of the day by Konkona Ghosh from Assam University.
Good afternoon to all the dignitaries present here. I am Konkona Ghosh. I'm a doctoral research scholar of Assam Central University, and I'm also an assistant professor of NSHM Media School. So my research is about negotiating identity in newsprint, a study of the Indian Chinese community in Kolkata. So, Indian Chinese community is one of the ethnic marginalized group in Kolkata. They mostly live in Tangra, that is the new Chinatown, and Teriti Bazar, that is the old Chinatown. And this is a very dwindling population. They had a Mandarin newspaper named Xiongpo, and which has started its publication in 1969, but it has shut down during the COVID-19 pandemic. So this newspaper is was also renamed as the Chinese Overseas Overseas Chinese Commerce of India. So this newspaper has been shut down during COVID-19 pandemic, and this is the condition of the newspaper house. This was the publication house of this newspaper, and this is the sample of the newspaper copy. So mostly the shutdown of this only Mandarin newspaper in Kolkata, which was actually the cultural heritage of this ethnic group, it mostly affects the cultural identity of this Indian Chinese community in Kolkata. So from the existing literature, there are three main reasons of the shutdown of the only Mandarin newspaper in Kolkata. First is the demographic shift, the language loss, because most of the new generation Indian Chinese people don't know the language Mandarin. And the last one is the political marginalization. So if I consider the theoretical framework, how the shutdown or the closure of the Mandarin newspaper is represented in the Indian newspaper in Kolkata, that is the main thing of my research paper. So considering the framing theory given by Erving Goffman, this theory can be aligned with this study because the newspaper represent the issue, and audience will be helpful to understand and interpret the seriousness and the reasons behind the closure of this particular Mandarin newspaper in Kolkata. So this theory can be aligned with this issue of the shutdown of Xiongpo in Kolkata, because it has shown an end of an era. So if I consider the research gap from the existing literature, it has been found that cultural identity of the mentioned community, that is the Indian Chinese community in Kolkata, is represented through its celebration, like Chinese New Year celebration, its cuisine, that is the Indian Chinese cuisine, and obviously the media coverage of the only Mandarin newspaper in Kolkata. So my research focuses on the reason behind the closure of the newspaper. So these are my research objectives. First one is to understand the response of the Indian Chinese community towards the closure of the only Mandarin newspaper named Xiongpo, to analyze the way of representation by the selected English language newspapers in Kolkata regarding the shutdown of Xiongpo, to investigate the portrayal of the reason behind the closure of Xiongpo by the selected English language newspaper in Kolkata. These are my research questions. How did the Indian Chinese community respond to the closure of the only Mandarin newspaper named Xiongpo in Kolkata? How do the selected English language national newspaper represent the news regarding the shutdown of the Xiongpo newspaper in Kolkata? And how do the selected English language newspaper portray the reason behind the closure of Xiongpo in Kolkata? So this is my research methodology. I have conducted a content analysis with 3 news articles of Times of India, which is published in 22nd January, 22nd May, 22nd May, 2nd June, and another one is from the 2nd June. And my total sample size is the 3, followed by the purposive sampling, and the unit of analysis of my study is the news, the language framing, as well as the tone of the news, so that we can understand how the shutdown of the only Mandarin newspaper is represented among the audience. So from the findings and discussion, I can say that for the coverage of 22nd May, it is found that the every news article of Times of India focuses on the history of the Indian Chinese community in Kolkata, and how the how the shutdown of this newspaper affects its cultural identity, because it is portrayed as not only the emotional it not only has the emotional effects on the Indian Chinese community, also it has the social effects on the community. And in case of the 2nd June of newspaper, the Indian Chinese community focuses on the.
You're left with more 2 minutes to complete
Okay.
the paper.
Okay. So and they are thinking about the revival of the Indian Chinese that only Mandarin newspaper, because they had lost all the contacts of the distributor and the editors of the newspaper. So they has decided to recruit a new editor for this particular newspaper to revive this Mandarin newspaper. And if I can conclude that the closure of the only Mandarin newspaper in Kolkata has marked a significant cultural loss for the Indian Chinese community, because this community, the population of this community is shrinking, and the shutdown of the Mandarin newspaper serves as a reminder that the Indian Chinese community faces a significant loss in terms of their economy, in terms of their cultural heritage, etc., etc. So the Times of India has documented the legacy of the only Mandarin newspaper in Kolkata, so that it can be helpful to preserve the cultural heritage of this particular community. These are the references for my study. And thank you, and I'd request Shashwati ma'am for her invaluable advice so that I can improve my research on this particular topic. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm audible. Thank you, Konkorna.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, I'll do the sum up at the end.
Okay,
and
ma'am,
I think
sure.
we'll be taking the questions from the audience also at the end of deliberation of all the other speakers.
Okay, thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Do we have any questions? Any queries from the audience? Letter? Fine, fine. Okay. Okay, fine. The next speaker of the day came from oral tradition to digital resistant. It's very difficult to pronounce her name.
Hello, hello. This is a PPT, and yeah, it's a PDF. So is it able to control from here? Okay. I'm so sorry. A very good afternoon to one and all present here. Today, I am really fortunate to be presenting here as a part of 4th National Media Conclave. My name is K.M.L. Somtwangi, and I'm a research scholar from the Department of Mass Communication, Mizoram University. And this work is in collaboration with my co-author, Dr. Lanwati Kyangte, and together we have been exploring a topic very close to both our heart and our lived realities. The title of our presentation is From Oral Tradition to Digital Resistance, Mizo Folktales in India's New Media Landscape. So without further ado, I would start the presentation. So I want us to begin with basics for a little context, because this research, while rooted in media studies, is also deeply historical. Mizo folktales have been more than just a bedtime stories. They are the repositories of ancestral memories, of moral values, and of community cohesion. And as Lal Tangliana in 2005 have beautifully put it, Mizo folklore is the very grammar of being Mizo. It teaches us not just how to speak, but also how to be, how to relate to kin, to spirits, to land, and to justice. So these stories carries our cosmologies, our understanding of what is right and what is wrong, and of honor and sacrifice and spiritual balance. But here is the problem. Despite the profound cultural weight of this tradition, Northeast India received only 1.48 of national media coverage. And when it is covered, these narratives are reductive and often reframed through insurgency, conflict, or exoticism. So we begin with a question: what happens when these folktales move online? What happens when creators take to YouTube, Instagram, and podcasting not just to entertain, but to reclaim narrative agency? So these are our research questions. Our study was structured around 3 guiding research questions, and I want to pause here because I think these aren't just academic curiosity, they are very much rooted in lived culture stakes. First, we have: how do digital adaptations preserve or narrate Mizo folktales? Number 2, how do they form counter-publics that challenge mainstream erasure? Number 3, are these digital voices authentically subaltern or shaped by platform aesthetics and algorithms? And to explore these questions, we anchored our analysis in 2 foundational thinkers. First, Nancy Francais, who gave us the concept of subaltern counterpublics. I won't dwell much on it. I think we all know what subaltern counterpublic is. And second, we have Gayatri, who and her iconic Can the Subaltern Speak? These are our theoretical framework that will guide the whole paper and the research. And this was going to the methodology. This was a qualitative study grounded in interpretive methods that privilege the meaning-making, context, and cultural nuance. Our sample consisted of 12 digital folktale adaptations, all published between 2020 to 2025 across YouTube, Instagrams. The key examples include Maurangi stories, Lianda Ute Unau stories, and Rairatia stories. And we employed 3 layers of data collection, which include: number 1, content analysis. We closely examined the visual style, narrative structure, and symbolic motifs. And second, digital ethnography, which includes studying comment sections, view counts, and patterns of engagement. And number 3, semi-structured interviews with 3 content creators and 6 audience members, all of whom engage regularly with Mizo digital storytelling. And we did analyze these materials through the framework of Fraser and Spivak, allowing us to move between media form, political context, and cultural meanings. Now coming to the findings. Our first finding is encouraging. Across the boards, these digital folktales retain core thematic elements: orphanhood, resilience, kinship, and moral justice. These are not just hollowed out versions of the originals. On the contrary, they are often followed linear narrative arcs that echoed the oral rhythm of Zolbuk storytelling, complete with symbolic anchors like Mizo attire, local dialect, and spirit cosmology. One viewer told us, "The story feels the same as my grandmother told me." And this line stuck with us. It speaks to the power of continuity even across formats. Absolutely. Sorry. Let's move to to what I would argue in the aesthetics heart of the project, the complex visual politics of these folktale adaptations. So while the first set of the findings emphasize how traditional themes like moral justice, kinship, and resilience remain intact, the question here becomes: how are these values seen? How are they visualized? And when we observed is a pattern that I would call aesthetic hybridity. Many of these adaptations, particularly intended for younger viewers or for broader online engagement, tend to blend global animation standard with Mizo culture elements. Take the widely viewed adoption of Maurangi as a case of point. The character of Maurangi here, who traditionally is a orphan embodying moral clarity and quiet strength, is now referred to as Disney-like animation.
Ma'am, you have 2 minutes to wrap up.
Okay, large symmetrical eye, light skin, and smooth Euro-American facial portions. And there, does she look like Mizo? Does she look like, to me, or to my people. In other adaptation, we have this 3D character of white baby wearing Mizo traditions, Mizo culture attire, dancing to Mizo nursery rhymes. And I remind you that baby is white. So here Spivak voice become incredibly relevant again. She reminds us that the subaltern can be allowed to speak, but only if they speak in a language, or in this case, a visual grammar that is legible to dominant system. And in findings 3, we have platform constraint. So digital storytelling does not exist in a vacuum. It exists within structure of algorithmic governance, and creators are acutely aware of this. One animator explained, we cut slower scenes, otherwise people leave. So this tells us something very important. This tells us that culture storytelling is being replaced by software. And now I'm coming to finding force, because I want to tell you all the things, and audience reception. Amid these compromises, there's also something deeply moving. When we are analyzing viewer comments and interviewed Mizo audience, particularly younger urban and diasporic viewers, the feedback was not cynical, it was emotional, it was intimate. This, some comments like, this remind me of my grandmother when she used to tell me bedtime stories. And this, I think, is one of the most powerful outcomes of digital folk tales. And here, Nancy France's concept of counterpublics become useful again. The audience spaces, comment threads, shares, reposts, function as a miniature counterpublics. And and this, I believe, is the most urgent paradox at the heart of the study. Spivak insight came back with full force. The subaltern cannot speak, not because they are silent, but because what they say is filtered, reformatted, and reframed. And this is my conclusion, some of the recommendation that I would like to make. And with that, I would like to end my presentation. Thank you so much for listening patiently.
Thank you. Interesting deliberation. We'll have some questions for her also after we finish with the other speakers.
Hello. This is to all the presenters. Please do not leave after your presentation. We'll have a group photo together. The next presentation of the day is of Shinjini Das and Shreya Barik from Sister Nivedita University.
Hello. Good afternoon, everyone, respected all the dignitaries, scholars, my fellow participants. I am Shreya Barik, Master Final Year student of Mass Communication and Journalism from Sister Nivedita University. Along with me, my co-presenter, Shinjini Das, Final Year student of Mass Communication and Journalism from Sister Nivedita University. I feel privileged to stand before you at this 4th National Conclave to present our research titled Frames of Silence and Resistance, Representation of Marginalized Communities in Indian Media. Let's begin by addressing the core problem. For decades, mainstream Indian media has historically silenced, misrepresented, or simply ignored the voice of marginalized communities, including Dalits, Adivasis, the LGBTQ community, women, and religious minorities. The dominant narratives that we often see on screen tend to reinforce the existing structural inequalities in our society. However, a change is underway. We are witnessing the rise of the powerful resistance movement, particularly in independent cinema and OTT platforms. The next, we are having our theoretical frameworks. To ground our research, we used a few key theoretical frameworks. First, we drew upon the Hall concept of media as a construct. Hall argued that media does not just hold a mirror up to reality, it actively builds meaning, and it's doing so. Secondly, we have a Spivak critical question, can the subalternate speak? This framework highlights how marginalized groups are frequently denied narrative agency. And finally, we looked at the rise of OTT platforms. As discussed by the Nanon in 2021, these digital spaces have become vital sites for counter-narratives, allowing creators to bypass the traditional gatekeepers of mainstream media. This led to our primary research aim to explore how Indian cinema and OTT platforms in the decades from 2015 to 2025 have represented marginalized communities. To guide our study, we focus on two key questions. How do Hindi cinema and OTT platform represent marginalized identities? Do this representation function as mere tokenism, or are they authentic narratives of resistance? And secondly, and importantly, how do audience perceive this portrayal in terms of authenticity, empathy, and social impact? To answer this question, we adopt a mixed method approach. First, for our text analysis, we used professive sampling to select 5 key films and series that address different aspects of marginalization. And second, we conduct an audience reception study through a structured online survey. We had 100 responses, primarily urban, educated students and professionals between the ages of 18 to 15. Next, we are having a survey results which will be discussed by Shinjini.
As we have done an online survey, and with that survey we have got that 78% of our respondents do engage with such content which deal with caste, creed and minority struggle. So we know that the audiences do not take this as a very niche content, and the respondent do prefer the OTT platform more to consume such content, because OTT platforms are democratic, authentic, and they do give a very diverse approach. Next is the impact. Our audiences feel that this sort of movies do have a strong awareness in the society, and according to 30% of a respondent, Adivasis are the most neglected ones and followed by the Dalits. Next, we have a perspective change, where surprisingly 64% of our participants has said us that the movies does change their perspective, which is a very unfortunate thing in a society which we don't see often. Next, we have 4 films that deal with such caste discrimination, where people do face a lot of problem, caste discrimination and everything. First, we have Article 15, where it talks about caste-based violence, where we find Dalit girls' bodies. And then we have Jai Bhim, the movie which talks about a irregular Adivasi tribe where they face caste discrimination, they face police brutality and custody violence. Then we have Tali, a biographical series of Gauri Sawant, where we traces the journey and role in the landmark of 2014 NLSA judgment, where they got the 3rd gender recognition. Then we have a movie Madithi. It deals with a girl, Yoshna, and the Puthirai Varnar community, where the Puthirai word itself means untouchable, where the traditional role of this community is to wash blood-stained clothes and deal with the deceased, and this is the reason why they are they are considered untouchable, and it is told by the other caste they are unfit to be seen. The future that we have over here, the research was limited to Hindi and selected
Next
regional...
2 minutes left to complete your presentation.
Okay. The research was limited to Hindi and selected regional OTT films with an urban English-speaking audience. Future studies must include rural and non-English speaking respondents to capture a fuller spectrum. We also need to study resistant cinemas of Tamil, Malayalam, Bengali, because they have produced some of the strongest counter-narratives. Another avenue is grassroots media platforms like Dalit Camera and Transvision, where marginalized communities represent themselves without mediation. To conclude, Indian media today is a space of silence and resistance. Bollywood still continues to reproduce stereotypes, but independent and OTT cinemas are reshaping representation towards dignity and agency. Our survey shows that audience are not passive. They criticize tokenism, yet embrace authentic voices. Ultimately, Indian media stands at a crossroad. It must choose whether to continue a legacy of erasure or to finally embrace a truly inclusive and authentic vision for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Shinjini and Shreya.
Thank you, ma'am.
A very nice presentation. All the best to you for your future endeavors.
Thank you
We'll
so
take the questions together later.
Thank you so much. We'll move to the next presentation of the day by Dr. Shomodeep Ghosh, North Bengal, St. Xavier's College.
Very good afternoon to all of you present here. With due permission from the chairperson, I would like to begin my presentation. The title of my paper is A Cocktail of Motion and Emotion, Leaping, Longing and Labyrinth in the select lyrics of Gulshan Baura. Now, Gulshan Baura, he was I should say, because he is no more, he was a lyricist of Bollywood films from 1970s, after 1970s. Baura, occasionally overshadowed by the other lyricists of the age, crafted songs that are not merely ornamental interludes, but narratives on emotions. And that is why his lyrics may be termed as a configuration of longing, where images, metaphors, and feelings produce a lived world of romance. We need to understand the context of 1970s Bollywood, because prior to that, there was a significant contribution by progressive writers. Raja Mehdi Ali Khan, Gulzar was all there, Kaifi Azmi was there. So they had a specific tradition whose emphasis was already always on Hindustani diction. But from 1970s, there was a rapid intervention of commercialization that perhaps forced the lyricist to change the linguistic narrativity. But Baura never surrendered to that. We cite few examples, such as one film directed by Ramesh Bell. It got released in the year 1978. The title of the film is Kasme Wade, where Baura wrote, "We shall honor our vows and continues to meet across lifetimes." And thereby he situates the beings of the lovers as, "You are the lamp, I am the wick." There was a post-structuralist thinker whose name was Rolla Barthes. He wrote a book, a remarkable one, A Lover's Discourse, where he stated, "The lover is an artist, and each image is its own end." Throughout my paper, what I have tried to show is that the very concept of longing presented through romance or love is not a static one. Rather, it keeps changing its characters, it keeps changing its dimensions. For example, one film, the title of the film was Janeja, and it was released in the year 1983, where Baura writes, "Some flame is of glass, some moth is of brass." So this glass and brass, this flame and moth, it's a traditional imagery in Indo-Persian lyrics, Shama Parwana. But the very nature of love, sometimes he says it's like a glass which is fragile, and sometimes it's like a brass which is quite resilient. Not only this, in another lyric from the film Khel Khel Mein, and the lyric is Ek Mein aur Ek Tu, where he presents love as a matter of joviality, of playfulness, where the joy, play, destiny, all collapsing into one. What I tried to show in this particular paper is that in his lyrics, love is embodied, it is fragile as well as resilient. It is also a pain that asserts fidelity, commitment. It is parallelly a submission and persuasion. It is a testimony to torment and ordeal. At the same time, there is a philosophical note as well, where the intimacy becomes, or intimacy changes into, intimacy is of course a parameter of romance, it changes into an ontological security, the security of the being. And thereby it denotes the romantic self, the romantic subject position of the speaker. At the same time, traditionally speaking, love has also become a matter of consecration. So the title of the paper, Leaping Longing Labyrinth. Labyrinth, as we all know, that it's a tapestry. It's a tapestry, it's a canopy, it's a presentation where this longing in the form of love is never ever fixed, rather it keeps changing, as if it keeps taking its leaps, jumps. And thereby I would like to say that he was a lyricist of 1970s who was a lyricist with differences. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ghosh. Very interesting presentation. We will be taking questions together later. Next one, next panelist, please.
Thank you so much, sir. The next presenter is Dr. Shujata Mukhopadhyay from Hiralal Mojumdar Memorial College for the Women, Dakshineshwar.
Good afternoon to all of you, and thank you for having me here. I thank the organizers and to the chair. As you can see, the topic for my presentation today is the limping body as a narrative engine, ableism, power and betrayal embodied in Langra Tyagi's Omkara. So, the next slide. So as you can understand, my presentation will be on disability studies embodied in the film Omkara by Vishal Bhardwaj, which is an adaptation of Shakespeare's Othello, and it was released in the year 2006.
Ma'am, you're provided with a remote or controller. Excuse me,
Okay.
a pointer, yes.
Can you please tell me how to, okay. So now, regarding the theoretical background of my research paper, my research paper is the interspersement of three different theories. One deals with disability studies, the second is cinematic aesthetics, and the third is cultural politics. And in my paper, I draw inspiration from all the three people, like Rosemary Garland Thompson's theory of the extraordinary body, Michel and Snyder's concept of narrative prosthesis, and Michel Foucault's theory of power and normativity. So when I am talking about the film Omkara, as you can see, this is the picture of Langra Tyagi, and he has been represented in a very sinister form in this film, who has a disability which is called limping. And for this reason, he is called Langra Tyagi, though he has another different name in the film. And my research methodology is dealing with the qualitative analysis of the film Omkara, where I have tried to analyze the textual and cinematic signifiers like dialogues, lighting, camera, visual framings, silences, and the songs. So in my entire paper, the whole paper in which I have presented this, there is a detailed analysis of the lighting, the silences, the songs, etc. Now, I have also drawn from the theory of disability studies, which shows how the ableist gaze of hegemonic masculinity, which has been represented in Hindi cinema, challenges a disabled person. And in this case, in Omkara, this is iconic in the representation of Langra Tyagi, which has been played by Saif Ali Khan. Now, the research questions which I have are, how is disability constructed in Omkara? Through language, imagery, and narrative. How does Omkara represent Langra Tyagi's disability, both linguistically and physically and cinematically? In what ways does the ableist gaze configure Langra as the embodiment of otherness? That is how he is excluded. And how does the interplay of disability, caste, and masculinity structure Langra's exclusion and revenge? And lastly, to what extent does Omkara reproduce or resist dominant cinematic tropes of disability and villainy? So these are my research questions. In a very short parameter, let me tell you. First, when we encounter Langra Tyagi in the film Omkara, we see that the very name of Langra, he has a different name, but here he's called Langra throughout the entire film. And this particularly name, Langra, and he, in different dialogues you can see, Are Langra, Sambhal ke chal. So, in each and every dialogue that I have tried to show here, he is depicted as a person who has disabilities, and in the way that he has his disabilities, he is excluded from the mainstream gang of Omkara, where he's the head. And ultimately also in the resolution of the film, we see how he is excluded because of his disability. He's thought to be cunning, which is used as a symbolic trope, and then how he ultimately dies, and he is thought to be a manipulative and a violent person. Now, there are three things which I have tried to focus on in the depiction of Langra Tyagi in Omkara. And these three angles are the ableist gaze. The first is the ableist gaze. Now, what is the ableist gaze? The ableist gaze is the hegemonic masculinity that we see in Hindi films. Think of Dar, think of Bazigar, Shah Rukh Khan, and you can understand what hegemonic masculinity means. But here when I depict Saif Ali Khan, he is shown to be the counter-hegemonic personality with a disability, and because of this disability, he is excluded from mainstream. The second is the cinematic frame of Langra Tyagi, where we see him as an epitome of otherness. And how is this epitome of otherness established in the film of Vishal Bhardwaj? He is shown always in a big frame with close-ups, and all the time we see him limping. He has a very rough costume at his end, and which shows the roughness of his character. Also, there are marked silences in Vishal Bhardwaj's film, where we see that, when other people are talking, they have a certain ambient sound in the background. But when Langra Tyagi is talking, or even when he's silent, his face does the speaking, which is shown in close-ups. Or maybe at times, even his limp is being shown in close-ups. Also, I want to talk about narrative prosthesis, which has been theorized by Snyder, where she says that the crutch of a lame man here is his limp, which is acting as a political symbol, as a cultural symbol, and as a physical symbol. Now, in Omkara, Langra Tyagi is repeatedly framed in the camera as close-ups, which I said, but the thing
last 2 minutes left for your presentation.
Okay.
Quickly wrap up.
So what we see in the cinematic gaze is how he has been excluded from the gang of Omkara, and at last also we see how he loses out to Kesu Firangi, and he does not become the head of the gang. Ultimately, I come to the tragic resolution of Omkara, where Langra Tyagi dies, and the last dialogue which he gives is, "Main hi dost tha, main hi dushman tha," which shows that when you are excluded, you are there as a person of exclusion, but they need you when they have some violent acts to do. You are loyal, but your loyalty is never taken into questions. So in one word, you are there, and you are also not there. Thank you so much. That's Omkara from my side.
Thank you, Dr. Mukhopadhyay. Good deliberation. We'll take some questions after this.
We'll move further with the presentation. The next presenter of the day, Shamota Chakraborty and Tanushri Golui, Vishwa Bharati University and Ramasadei College. Good afternoon to respected ma'am and everyone present here. I am Shramata Chakraborty with my co-author Tanushree Gulai. Will present our paper titled Social Media as a Catalyst for Women and Entrepreneurs, an Exploratory Study in West Bengal. Next. The empowerment of women is a significant process that guarantees equal access to opportunities in every aspect of life: economic, cultural, social, and political. This not only enhances their personal potential but also aids in societal development. But the picture is not so simple. Women in India often face gender biased realities such as family responsibilities, lack of support from parents or husband, mobility restrictions, and limited access to capital. These factors reflects their marginalized positions in the entrepreneurial space. On the other hand, social media has become an integral part of our life, influencing how we communicate, connect, and even build a business. Social media platforms like Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and LinkedIn have created new avenues for business promotion and customer engagement. So, the central question of this study is, can social media reduce these barriers and act as a catalyst for women entrepreneurs, especially in West Bengal? Objectives. Next. This study was guided by two objectives. One is to examine the role of social media in promoting women and entrepreneurs in West Bengal, and two is to explore the challenges and barriers women entrepreneurs face while using social media as a business tool. Next. This study based on two theoretical models. One is uses gratification theory, which helps to us to understand why women entrepreneurs use social media, and two is technological acceptance model, which helps us understand how women adopt social media based on its usefulness and easy of use. By combining those two models, the study examined both motivational drives and perceived technological affordness that influence women's digital entrepreneurship. Next. This is a qualitative exploratory study. Primary data were collected through in-depth telephonic interview with five women entrepreneurs from different categories like food blogging, resin art, home baking, bridal modeling, and mehendi art in West Bengal. Selected by convenience sampling via Facebook and an expert interview with a psychologist to gain insight into the emotional and psychological aspect of women's digital entrepreneurship. Additionally, we reviewed previous studies and some analyzed some social media handles as a secondary data. Interview topics covered career length and motivations, the role of social media and platform choice, approximate income source, challenges, experience in online, strategies for dealing with negativity, and perception of sustainability for their chosen profession. For further discussion, I'm over to my co-author, Tanushree. Tanushree, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. As my co-writers say, we select a methodology for our paper. For primary data, we collect some interview and take some inspiring examples. One of our interviewee, Boishaki Bhattacharjee, the face of Hangless Day Out, says that without social media, her Hangless Day Out would not exist. She described the positive aspects like economic independence and identity, and the negative aspects like inconsistent, reach, and negative comments. Copying by focusing on consistency and what she called a just ignore theory. She also runs free promotion for others women entrepreneurs. And then other interviewee, Neha Mojumdar, owner of Mehendi Junction and Wedding Junction from South Chobbish Parganas, who started with Mehendi art in school, built a business entirely through Facebook, and now trains other women. Pooja Odhikari, resin artist and makeup artist from Behala. Pooja turned to resin art out of passion and necessity when formal employment was uncertain. She said that social media makes far and close. She explains how social media help her. Piyu Das, bridal model and kolka artist from Howrah. According to Piyu, bridal makeup artist and modeling industry is totally based on social media. From getting contacts and booking all are dependent on social media platforms. This industry opens some new professional opportunities like makeup artist, bridal model, kolka artist, mehendi artist, etc. Srimoyi Bhaduri, a home baker, said that her bakery, Shree's Bakery, was born during the pandemic and flourished only because of social media promotions. She secured FSSAI certificate and now operates as a baker and trainer. Across these stories, we see
Ma'am, you're left with next 2 minutes to complete your presentation.
see how women often restricted to home spaces and are creating new professional identities online. Each of these narratives illustrate the dual character social media, enabling visibility, markets, and identity. At the same time, exposing vulnerabilities like trolling, scams, and the uncertain logic of platform algorithm. Psychological insights. We interviewed Anandita Mukherjee, Assistant Professor of Psychology, who emphasized that social media provides not only economic empowerment but also psychological empowerment. Social appreciation, increased self-confidence, and identity reinforcement. We also find some inspiring examples like Priyanka De. She is the student of hotel management from Modhumgram, North 24 Parganas. Currently running homemade beauty product business, have 186K followers in her Instagram page. She has a team of women employers. Now, some of her brand products like Sindoor, originally made by women sex workers. Shopna Kormokar, her page Shopnadi Rannaghar, a middle-aged woman from Bonga, North 24 Parganas, running food home delivery services. She has a noticeable social media presence with the help of her family. It proves that age is not factor in this digital era. On the other hand, there is very limited study founded in this context, focusing on social media, focusing on West Bengal. One is Hossain and Halda 2022, and then other one is Chatterjee and Banerjee 2024. Findings. The study revealed some clear patterns. New women dominated professions like makeup artist, food blogging, resin art, home baking are emerging and expanding after COVID-19.
Ma'am, your time's over. Quickly wrap up.
Thank you so much. After emerging and expanding after COVID-19, women use social media for information seeking, networking, and customer connection, self-presentation, and brand building, economic empowerment, identity construction, and supporting other women. And then conclusion. In conclusion, this study shows that social media has created opportunities for women to pursue entrepreneurship, especially in sectors like home-based bakeries, handicrafts, beauty services, and digital content creation. At the same time, it exposed women to new challenges, negativity, scams, and uncertainties. And there is some limitation. We select small sample sizes and convenience sampling, so findings are indicative rather than generalizable. Future research should expand district-wise and include quantitative comparison across urban, township, and rural context. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Shamatha and Tanushri, good deliberation. I will take the questions with all together.
Thank you so much. We'll move to the next presentation of the day by Dr. Abira Chaudhuri from Netaji Subhash Engineering College. Can you please come up on the stage? Thank you. What's the pointer?
A very good afternoon to everyone present here. Good afternoon, ma'am. The title of my study is Redefining Indian Women in Indian Television Ads, a Critical Analysis. Television advertisements or commercials have gained immense popularity and business significance over the years and played a crucial role in shaping societal perceptions on multiple aspects of human life and human in particular. Advertisements are tools of strategic communication and appeals to a specific group or target audience. Portrayal of specific gender in specific product domain in advertising is often decided keeping in consideration the product type and the target audience, eventually leading to societal biases and gender stereotypes. However, recent studies and gender representational perspectives in some specific areas tend to rethink gender depiction in advertising. Depiction of women in Indian television advertisements has evolved over time, exhibiting a slow but steady change in societal norms on sexuality and growing awareness on gender equity. The study aims to identify the gender representation techniques and strategies employed in television commercials or ads in India between 2010 and 2025 and its impact and intention on gender stereotyping in particular. The study analyzes gender representation in Indian television commercials and examines the change, if any, in the nature of portrayal of sexuality, gender ratio in lead characters, and gender depiction in specific product domain in the last 2 decades. Since most of the ads were not available, they were collected from YouTube. The study applies the narrative interpretative analysis method as a research approach with an exhaustive literature review, and this work employs a systematic evaluation of the literature to present a descriptive qualitative research results. Some of the references and the literature that has been surveyed to arrive at a perspective is mentioned. With the rise of digital media and increasing population, the Indian Advertising Agency has experienced tremendous growth in the last decade, acquiring a heightened economic importance and emerging as a tool to encash wide network of lucrative business domains and consumers. In the last 2 decades, the Indian Advertising Agency reported sustained growth. As per the reports of FICCI and KPMG 2012 and 2014, there has been an increase in advertisement spends by marketers. As per the IAMRC reports, the Indian advertising market size reached INR 908.6 billion in 2024. The market is expected to reach INR 2118.8 billion by 2033. The increasing investment predictions in advertisement sector clearly indicates a wide acceptance and prevalence of advertisements as an important mechanism of marketing tactic, strategic tool, and communication tool to suffuse not only a desire for a promotional lifestyle, but a societal norm to a target audience in particular. In the process of promotion and persuasion, advertisements become an invisible instrument to convey societal norms, culture, expression, and thoughts. stratification of gender behavior and gender roles, transmitting perception on masculinity and femininity, leading to the idea of development of femvertising. The findings of the study, to sum up, comes to the world of advertising post-globalization have included women characters as much as male characters for persuading the target audience with an heightened use of women identities and bodies to compete, but these depictions have often been done at the cost of violating women's self-respect and dignity. Very recent studies, however,
Ma'am, last
and the
2 minutes
analysis
left to complete your presentation.
Okay. An analysis of Indian ads of the last decade in particular show a slow but steady shift in the portrayal of women in Indian television commercials, breaking stereotypes and emerging as a powerful leads. Some Indian commercials have come up with some more gender-balanced advertisements, setting new norms and challenging deep-rooted gender stereotyping tendencies. Say, for example, Havel's Hawa Badlegi depicting women's identity with her maiden surname, and Ariel's Share the Load advertisements depicting men's involvement in active household activities, actually hinting towards de-stereotyping. Some other very important advertisements, the Axis Bank advertisement by Deepika Padukone, Experience Access, is another example of female leads breaking into male-dominated product domains, such as banking and finance. Kiara Advani endorsing AU Small Finance Bank is another shift in societal perception about product domain specification related to gender perceptions. One more ad that I have not mentioned here is worth mentioning. That is the ad by Deepika Padukone again in Hilton Hotels. The reel that broke the internet with 1.9 billion views is definitely a significant indicator towards the fact that women are actually entering into the male-dominated product domain when industry or the advertising industry is actually growing into a huge size. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Should we go for the next speaker, please?
Thank you so much, ma'am. We'll move on to the next presenter of the day. Pujarjita Sarkar from Amity School of Communication. Can you please come up on stage?
A very good afternoon, one and all present here. I am Pujarjita Sarkar. I am a second-year bachelor student of journalism and mass communication. So, as you can guess, I am one of the youngest presenters in this forum. But being young comes with an advantage, which is you are basically curious. And for me, that curiosity since childhood has always been films. So that curiosity led me to my research topic, which is a study of gender dynamics in Indian cinema and how they reinforce perceptions and stereotyping of women. Coming to the introduction, basically, as we know, ladies and gentlemen, cinema is one of the most powerful arms of mass communication. Beyond its entertainment value, it shapes cultures, ideations, and even educates the masses, right? Films influence public opinion, normalize social behaviors, and deeply imprint on our collective society. but I guess I won't be cancelled for saying this. In India, as a society which is majorly patriarchal, the cinematic portrayal of women has consistently reinforced regressive practices such as abuse, eve-teasing, harassment by presenting them as almost very everyday normal occurrences. I'll tell you how this happens. It has a very psychological element to it, which I'll be diving into later in my speech. In mainstream Bollywood, women are often relegated to sexualized spectacles through song sequences or voyeuristic camera angles, objects of desire meant to satisfy the male gaze, or they are presented as the damsels in distress, dependent on the hero for their rescue, or characters with very short or unimportant roles that merely highlight the hero's emotional side. And beyond these roles, even, ladies and gentlemen, what a similar pattern I find is their physicality, which I find locked in terms of fixed patterns. To explain that, I could also explain the fair skin, slim figures, spotless faces. These have almost become casting markers for deciding female leads in most mainstream films. Male actors tend to enjoy more diversity in looks, not all the time, of course, but actresses often appear interchangeable. Coming to the objectives of my research paper. My research is built on 4 main objectives, as you can see. To analyze recurring patterns in the portrayals of women in mainstream Bollywood cinema. To streamline my research, I have chosen mainstream Bollywood films, and I made a conscious decision of excluding regional films just for the sake of streamlining my research. To understand how these portrayals reinforce gender perceptions and shape behaviors in real life. Then to question the creative choices of filmmakers in representations of females. And also to ask if regressive depictions can ever be excused as just entertainment. At its heart, my study questions whether cinema is only reflecting the society or quietly teaching us to, normalize these stereotypes. We'll see this later. Coming to the theoretical framework, I have explored this issue by closely following the theories as I've mentioned over here. Number 1, and the most primary theory of my research is Laura Mulvey's male gaze theory, which states that women are placed as passive spectacles for male pleasure without any specific agency of their own. Coming to Martha Nussbaum's objectification theory, this basically states how women are reduced to commodities or things stripped of dignity. The cultivation theory by Gerbner states that repeated exposure to such beliefs and these kind of archetypes, these specified archetypes, sometimes also makes us accept cinematic reality as our own reality. The last theory being the hypodermic needle theory. For certain audiences, films directly inject values into their mindset.
Just sorry to interrupt, theoretical framework. You can go to the next slide, please. I think otherwise you won't be able to finish.
Sure. I'll wrap this up very quickly. Thanks for the reminder, ma'am. The methodology for my paper, it has been qualitative in nature. I have conducted 3 semi-structured interviews of a film studies professor from Jadavpur University. My apologies, I forgot to include his name. He is Professor Sanjay Mukhopadhyay, an actor and theatre director, Mr. Kartikeya Tripathi, and a successful writer, Mr. Piyush Daga. Also, my apologies, something quick to state. An interview with a psychologist in this paper is pending, which I'll be conducting in due course of time. This has happened due to time and availability issues. Coming to the discussion, my analysis, having done a thorough analysis of many films, there are certain patterns which I have come across. In contemporary Hindi cinema, we mostly see female characters, even if assigned a significant role such as that of a doctor, pilot, agent, journalist, etc., has to check all the pointers of an imaginary list in terms of her looks, which would perfectly suit the hero's gaze and ideation of a beautiful woman. Coming to Kabir Singh and Animal, for instance, both of these films display toxic masculinity, controlling men, submissive women, the same kind of trope, yet both of them became immense commercial hits. Films like Rockstar and Brahmastra, wherein female leads were reduced to just the supporting the hero's self-actualization.
Ma'am, time's up. Please quickly wrap up.
Okay, sure. Thanks for the reminder. Rockstar and Brahmastra, wherein we observe that the female lead's primary function is to validate the hero's purpose or sacrifice herself. Also, in films like Radhe and Houseful, we see an illogical placement of a very significant age gap which has not been justified in the narrative whatsoever. And also, to point out the marketing dynamics, I did a case study on Tripti Dimri's career trajectory, wherein it is clearly visible that even though her critically acclaimed performances in Bulbul and Kala were not very much effective in terms of giving her mainstream visibility as much Animal did.
Please go to your findings.
And yes, ma'am, these were my findings. The discussion showed my findings and certain patterns which I have seen coming to the conclusion. So basically, what does this mean? Filmmakers cannot hide behind the excuse of creative liberty. No art should normalize or romanticize gendered oppression for the sake of mass appeal. And also, audiences are not passive recipients of the information being given to them. We too carry responsibility in what we choose to celebrate. By supporting progressive stories, we can demand that change. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pujarjita. We'll take the questions, the ones together.
Thank you so much, ma'am. We move on with the next presenter of the day, Tulika Chatterjee, Business Manager, Industry Connect, TIG.
Good afternoon, everybody. You have my PPT, right? Hello. Good afternoon, everybody. This is a rather rainy day. I would, can I start, ma'am? May I start? Thank you. Good afternoon, distinguished guests, respected colleagues, and my friends. I am Tulika Chatterjee from Techno India Group. I am Business Manager, Industry Connect, and I'm starting my presentation. It is an honor to be here among such esteemed thinkers and practitioners to share my work titled Censorship, Desire and Diaspora: The Politics of Media Reception in Southeast Asia. This research explores how media in Southeast Asia functions not merely as entertainment, but as a contested cultural battlefield where power, identity, and ideology are constantly being negotiated. In my words, I call media in Southeast Asia is a lifestyle. And why do I call it a lifestyle? We will speak about it. The region's media landscape is shaped by colonial legacies, diverse religious traditions, and rapid digital transformations. Media here does not simply reflect society, it actively constructs cultural meanings, mediating between state authority and everyday life, between global imports and local practices, between progressive aspirations and conservative traditions. One of the central insights of the work is the enduring influence of Hindi cinema and television across Southeast Asia. While scholarship often emphasizes Hollywood or K-pop, Hindi films and serials like Kyunki Saas Bhi Kabhi Bahu Thi in Indonesia or Kabhi Khushi Kabhi Gum in Malaysia have played a crucial role in shaping cultural discourse. These melodramatic narratives resonate emotionally, yet they also carry embedded patriarchal and heteronormative logics that, when transplanted into Southeast Asian contexts, can reinforce existing conservative structures. Now I'm going to talk about something that happened 10 years ago. I was in school, a very famous series, the Mahabharata, was aired on Star Plus. There. At that time, the television was very active. And I remembered what happened was all the actors from the Mahabharata used to travel from Indonesia to India every week, and they used to start their series there again and again. So that was a cultural exchange that at that time I did not understand at all. But when I was studying this and when I was growing older, I understood what was happening. It was a very strong cultural exchange. And that exchange is exactly what I am talking about right now. I remember a very famous actor, his name was Shahir Sheikh. He almost settled there and almost had a family because he had to spend so much time in Indonesia. Actually, because he was promoting and working for Star Plus for Mahabharata, which is a very important classical text for India and Hindu mythology. So, taking for instance the Indonesian remake of the Mahabharata, on one hand, it appears to localize Indian epic. On the other, it subtly reasserts the grandeur of Indian mythology while overshadowing indigenous storytelling traditions. This shows how cultural exchange can sometimes become cultural dominance. The politics become sharper when we consider state power censorship. Governments across the region, from direct bans in Myanmar to tight regulations in Singapore, curate what people can watch. Interestingly, oppositional local voices are often silenced, while imported Hindi melodramas pass more easily under the label of mere entertainment. This imbalance reveals how power chooses not only what stories travel, but also whose voices are heard and are amplified. Even the digital revolution, which once promised democratization, has not entirely dismantled these hierarchies. Platforms like YouTube and local streaming services helped spread Hindi media across borders, but algorithms, fan communities, and online discourse often replicate existing patriarchal norms and sometimes even fuel disinformation. The larger implications is this: media in Southeast Asia is never politically neutral. It introduces values, aesthetics, and hierarchies that interact with local contexts in layered ways. While Bollywood's reach is often celebrated as soft cultural diplomacy, Its reception here reveals both the possibilities of cultural permeability and the limitations of imposed conservatism. In conclusion, this is the religious divide I was talking about. In conclusion, to understand media in Southeast Asia, we must go beyond tracking content circulation. We must examine the power structures, censorship regimes, state agendas, and global hierarchies that govern how media is produced, consumed, and remembered. Media, I argue, is not simply a mirror of society. It is a site of cultural politics where hierarchies are normalized, identities are negotiated, and resistances are articulated. Media might not be entirely biased at this point, but media is selectively censored. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll take questions after the final speaker is done.
With that, we come to the last presentation of the day by Sudeshna Goswami. All the best.
Good afternoon, everyone.
So, ma'am, just a second.
Yeah.
We are doing the presentation thing.
So once the technical glitches are resolved, I think since we have finished she's the last speaker of this panel. So what I would suggest is that if we have questions for our speakers, maybe we can take 1 or 2 questions. Or are you done?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
You're
Good
ready?
to go, ma'am. Yeah. Yes, ma'am. Good to go.
Okay, then please start.
Kingshuk. I believe loose con. So, before starting, I would like to mention something. To be marginalized means to be pushed to the edge of the society in terms of social, economical, and of course political. But when we use the term marginalized, we often think of the large group or macro group. But here I would like to discuss about the micro group and within the marginalization within the family. So basically this is my topic, and I would like to mention in Pother Pachali, for instance, the elderly aunt Pishi, Buri Pishi, Indir Thakurun, we all know her. Despite her wisdom, remains excluded from decisions of the family. This exclusion is not due to incompetence, but a clash of expressive styles. The mother, means Shorbojoya, speaks in practical arithmetic terms, while Pishi communicates through culturally inflected songs like Hori Din To Gelo Shondhe Holo Par Koro Amare. Their inability to connect linguistically results in Indir Thakurun's marginalization. In this study, I am raising a few fundamental questions from a few important films of our country. So, first one is Par, Gautam Ghosh's Par. So here the character played by Nasiruddin Shah, that is Naurangia, and Rama by Shabana Azmi. So Naurangia, there is a sequence, there is a climax in that sequence. Naurangia fails to decode the mind of his wife. Is actually, I don't know how many of you seen Par or not, I'm not sure of it, but in that sequence, Naurangia fails to decode the mind of her wife, but in that time, his wife was pregnant, and there was a situation where they have to perform the task of crossing the river with lots of pigs, and that was very challenging. So now question is that why Naurangia failed to understand the mind of her pregnant wife? That's the main fundamental question here. So we can move to next thing, that is 36 Chaurangi Lane by Aparna Sen. So in that film, why Shomoresh? Shomoresh played by Dhritiman Chattopadhyay, the young poet. He didn't understand the language of cake on the eve of Christmas, and that eventually the old Anglo-Indian lady, Stoneham, Mrs. Stoneham, that performed by Jennifer Kapoor, became more lonely and marginalized too. Again, I have raised the question why Shomoresh did this kind of empathyless act. In this film, Aparna Sen's Sati, the character played by, again, Shabana Azmi, the character Uma, is a sign language user. She does non-verbal communication. And Uma has some cherished object, like very simple and cherished object, like the mirror, a white bangle and the red bangle. It's one kind of, like, we can call them Shakha and Pola in Bengali. So those objects have different significance and meaning altogether. But the question is, why did the family fail to understand the symbolic language of Uma? So that's the main question, and especially Uma's father. So next one is 15 Park Avenue. So have you all seen this film, 15 Park Avenue? So in this film, Mithi, that character played by Konkona Sen Sharma, for Mithi, 15 Park Avenue is not just the name of a street. It's an inner life world and a complete reality where she believes that she lives with her husband and 3 children. The real problem lies here. Her family and society refuse to recognize the personal reality of Mithi. So I'm talking about this despite of her illness. Okay. So this is from the clash that Mithi's marginalization arise. So hope we all remember the end of the film. I mean the climax of the film. So considering that, I'm raising these questions. So this one is next, The Rat Trap by Adur Gopal Krishnan. So in this film there was a
Ma'am, last 2
character
minutes
called...
left to wrap up.
Yeah. So in this film there was a character called Unni. So Unni had the extreme attachment issues with her old shabby dampy house, but the villagers were unable to decode the Unni's emotion with that particular house, which made Unni marginalized. So again, we can raise this question why the villagers were so empathyless and why they behaved like that only. So next, this is Sadgati by Shotojit Ray's. And Shotojit Ray's Sadgati, Dukhi was marginalized primarily by caste-based discrimination. But apart from that, Dukhi bought fresh green grass as a symbol of hope and tenderness to the Brahman for fixing the date of her daughter's marriage. But on the other hand, Brahmin offered him the axe. So, and this symbolic failure become ultimate layers of Dukhi's marginalization. I believe that. So, and I have discussed Pather Pachali and Indit Thakurun. So, next methodology, like, yeah, this is basic thing, and I would like to conclude that within even the smallest group, the person who is most marginalized often lacks the confidence to speak in full sentences. Such a person can no longer rely on spoken words. Instead, they are complete to express themselves through symbol and gesture, like the green grass or mohua leaves. It is the responsibility of both family and society to pay careful attention to this sign or this symbolic language, to observe them with sensitivity and to decode their meaning. Only then the weight of marginalization can be decreased. So yeah, I believe that. So we should behave with them with some sensitivity and with some empathy. That's the main thing I believe. So yeah, this is the thing. So feel free to ask me any question, like if you have, and please, ma'am.
Thank you. Now we can, the session is open now for questions or comments or opinions from the audience. So not just for her, for all the speakers. Earlier speakers, everyone actually.
So basically in this session, like time was extremely, we have time constraints. So like, yeah, I have touched just basic questions. So my students who are sitting in back, they can also ask me questions too. Please feel free to ask me questions.
Okay.
Yeah, please.
There is a question.
Okay. Okay, so yeah, he or she can come, or
maybe I can speak from the
yeah.
So all the participants, you have done exceedingly well. All the papers were really insightful and very relevant in today's time. So I'm Lokesh Chakma, research scholar from Center for Journalism and Mass Communication, Vishwabharati, and I'm also a faculty assistant professor from Techno India University, Tripura, teaching journalism and mass communication. So my question is for K. Malswam Luangi. Yeah, so for your presentation, it was very unique, and I really appreciate the way you have actually decoded how ancient Mizo stories are now being translated, or they are now digitized for the new age audiences, right? So I know, although you have touched these nuances, but my main question to you is that you have mentioned that there were, I think you have mentioned in your methodology that there were you took some interviews, right? There were some interviews. So my question to you is, even you have also mentioned that you have also grown up hearing these folk tales, folklore of Mizo folklores, and now how they are depicted on the digital format, right?
Yeah,
so my question is that, how much different do you think? I mean, those all were oral narratives, right? So when you are listening to them as you were growing up, and now that you are seeing this on the digital format,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So do you feel any stark contrast, you as an audience, or while you must have taken interviews, so were there any contrasting differences in terms of visualization, in terms of cultural depiction? So that's my question to you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, of course, there's a stark difference when we listen it and when we see it, because when we listen it, when it's oral passed down, we have like certain imaginations, like when suppose, let's say my grandmother told me these stories, and I can imagine like the protagonist as much as I want, but now in digital adaptations that was not like fluid anymore, it's limited. So when I interview the content creators, of course they have to be very, how would I say this, basic with their character, basic in sense of it has to be something that represents the whole culture, the whole Mizo, but at the same time, it needs their certain signature as well, because like every artist has their own signature. And I feel like it is very important because, as I've mentioned there's this visual hybridity that we have found out as in our research, because when we analyze the image and the color, the skin tone and everything, many characters doesn't look like a Mizo, someone from my hometown, from my land. And when I asked content creator about regarding that, we have drew the conclusion that is because of technological difficulties, because many content creators use, let's say, 3D animator like systems which have some default programming that the face needs to be white and all these certain things. And yeah, and also I feel like, yeah, as a culture, as someone from that, as a Mizo and as a whole, as a marginalized, we really need to have a good awareness and literacy regarding all those things. And that's my answer. I don't know if I answer you well.
No, I got your point.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lokesh. Now, if we have any questions from for other speakers. No questions? Okay, then, as session chair, I'll have to do a little roundup. Yeah, first and foremost, I'd like to say that it was really very interesting session. I mean, we have had about 11 speakers. I'm in excluding our plenary speaker. So, apart from two speakers who were not directly onto this theme of the session, but interesting nevertheless. Basically what I found was that, it was very interesting that we have had one of our esteemed speakers like Dr. Bhattacharya, whom I know she has knowledge and critical thinking and experience. Even we have Dr. Mukhopadhyay. She's also a senior teacher. So I had expected the senior teachers to and researchers to speak well. And of course, their knowledge has enriched all of us. But I was very impressed with the younger panelists who have, thought out of the box and, have provided a very interesting, I would say, angle to this discourse of marginalization. And initially, as a researcher myself on marginalization, I do work on gender issues, particularly women. So we do have, we know how mainstream media has, and has in the earlier times and even now has continued to neglect I won't say the marginalized, but the people who are to some extent voiceless. Because more than 50% of our people, of our country, are marginalized. So we cannot call them marginalized per se, because they are equal to the people, the so-called majority. Anyways, we always have a very, I won't say negative, but a kind of a doomsday kind of thing, impression that mainstream media has not done enough, and most importantly, what we can understand, mainstream media is profit-driven. So we have to understand that and unfortunately accept it. How do we go forward, which many of our panelists here and the speakers have spoken, that yes, the alternative media, and in this case, earlier we could have thought about community radio, community television. As a researcher on women, I speak about the self-employed Women's Association Seva of Ila Bhatt, who have been doing this community media thing for a very long time. So we already had alternative media. But now social networks onto the digital platform, I wouldn't say it's alternative media. At least that's what I personally feel. It's not alternative media, and which many of our speakers here have highlighted. So I would say the marginalized are, quote unquote, are not marginalized anymore per se, thanks to our digital platforms. And to end, I'd just like to quote Neelam C. Day, who has written just this year in Global Journal of Social Sciences, and I just end with her quotation. In India, social media has played a transformative role in amplifying the voices of the marginalized communities, normally underrepresented in mainstream media. These groups have found in social media a space to challenge existing oppressive narratives and to break silence, injustice, and foment change. So thank you. And before I end, I would like to thank the organizers at SNU, particularly Arindam, for inviting me here. Thank you. It has been a very interesting experience for me.
On behalf of the Department of Journalism and Mass Communication, I extend a heartfelt thanks to our keynote speaker, our session chair, and all the presenters. Can we have a round of applause for everyone, please? Thank you so much. Before we end, I would like to request all the presenters and faculties to come up on the stage for a group photo. As well as ma'am, come up on stage for the group photo.